I'd like to call to order this committee of the whole meeting in the town of Saugeen Shores and extend a welcome to everyone in the chambers this evening. Our first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'll remind every member of your responsibility. You can do so now or if and when it arises on the agenda. We have none declared. This evening we have no additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda, so we'll move into delegations. And this evening we have three. And the first delegation is Bill McKee and Ann Vivera-Davinsky. They're here about our Accessibility Advisory Committee RIA Stopgap program. So welcome, Ann and Bill. If you come to the mic, I think you've got most of your committee here, so it wouldn't be worthwhile if you introduced them all so we all know who they are.
We have our entire committee here.
That's fabulous. Just before you go, though, I was just wondering if I might, if it would be appropriate that the press declare a conflict of interest in this particular case or not.
He knows nothing. He knows nothing. That's why we're sitting. That's why we're sitting on opposite sides of the room. It's easier that way. I only know some first names, so I'll just go from there. So myself, Anne, Doug, Libby, Maureen, Victoria, and I'm drawing a blank. Joyce and Bill and Tracy. In fact, we're all here. The whole committee's here. This is amazing. So thank you, Mayor Mike and Council, for having us speak. This is a program that we've been working on for 2 years, if you can believe it. And Stopgap, as you can see by the picture, it should be bright green and bright red. What it is a young gentleman named Luke Anderson came up with an idea that there should be a ramp for those that need it in every building, in every town. And we don't have a lot of resources to think of how we're going to do that, but Luke came up with it. He's a young man who is an engineer, and he was tragically injured, and he started to think, I can't get into some of the buildings I used to love to get into. What can we do? How can we make a difference? So this is to assist communities at a very low cost or no cost to get a deployable entry ramp that would be at the front entrance of a business in Saugeen Shores. And it's just for single-stepped storefronts, which is, I know that you're probably thinking, you're going up and down the main street thinking, where are these storefronts? We'll get into that. Again, the website, if you do want to look for more information for right now, is stopgap.ca. Luke is just a young guy, and it's amazing what our youth will come up with when they're pushed to do it. Again, being an engineer, he came up with the Stopgap Foundation, and he does do a lot of public speaking, and he's a really great guy. His website's just amazing. But we have barriers in our environment. Some of them are man-made, some of them are natural. What we're trying to do is get rid of some of the man-made barriers that we have in Saugeen Shores to help our visitors and our customers, of which we're so important to have in our area, enjoy what we have to offer at Saugeen Shores. Again, new buildings have that great opportunity to build accessibility into it. Some of our older buildings do not. Stopgap is going to help the private businesses embrace the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, which will be coming into an action in a number of years coming up. This is a stopgap measure, hence the name. I like the name. It's going to give a visibility for those that maybe hadn't thought that their business could be accessible. But you know what? We're thinking of those that have disabilities. It isn't. What about the parent that has a young kid in a stroller? What about the parent that's taking their child that's older, that's in an assisted device? What about the grandparent that really wants to go into that store because they've always been in there, but now they're in a wheelchair? The Stopgap ramp system is going to allow them to enter that store that they've always been part of. And Saugeen Shores, we want to keep those people coming back to our businesses and our restaurants and our buildings. So not only does Stopgap being visible, like you saw at the beginning with the red and green, bring a little more awareness to accessibility issues, it's also going to give us the ability to get people into our businesses. Yes, there is a need. Our committee has spent hours going up and down the streets of Saugeen Shores to see what businesses would actually apply or be applicable for this Stopgap ramp. And there's nearly 20 in Port Elgin and nearly 20 in Southampton. So it's not just a one-off thing, folks. There's actually a great need in both these areas. So now I'm going to ask Bill to come along, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about the proposed process. So Bill McKee from our committee.
As Ann indicated, Luke Anderson was the person that started this particular project, and he'd be the first person to say that this is not a permanent solution. This is a temporary solution. But we feel, our committee, that it's a very good temporary solution. What do we do this? There's a particular process that we're looking at in order to get this project approved and in place. The first, of course, is to get council's approval to go ahead with this particular project. And, of course, that's why we're here today. Once we get approval for it, we would distribute to the various businesses in the town a form that they would fill out, which would be similar to this. Not necessarily exactly the same, but similar. And they'd fill it out, send it back. The businesses that met the requirements for the ramp, we would evaluate the entrance to their store. One thing we'd be doing in parallel with all this is we'd be seeking sponsors and volunteers for donations of material for help in building the ramps, etc. Once the ramp is built, we deliver it to the owners along with a sign that they would put into the window to indicate that if people needed a ramp, they could call a number on the sign, and the ramp would be set out for them. We've taken a look at some options for us on who would build these ramps. We look, as I said, for partners to do this. One of the things that we did look at is the possibility of maybe the high school students building these ramps. Some of the problems there, of course, are going to be with the kids either in school or not in school, looking at exams and things like that. But we'd have to look at various groups and individuals and businesses that would help us out with this project. Who would pay for them? We are hoping that the ramp will be available at a minimal cost, possibly even no cost. There's again a number of options that we've looked at, fundraising options to raise money, donations of material, donations, monetary donations, volunteer labor. One of the things that Kincardine, we found out that Kincardine has about 4 or 5 businesses that are interested in getting ramps for their business. And they have council approval over there in order to go ahead with this project. They are intending to try and have the 4 or 5 businesses over there that are interested have ramps by the long weekend in May. One of the big reasons that they were able to do this in a relatively short time was they used, I believe, some of their advisory committee's budget in order to buy the initial material for these 5 or 6 ramps. And that's one thing that we would be asking council here to approve for us as well. This here is just a slide on the sample design of the ramps. It's a bit difficult to see up there, but as Ann said, there's a stopgap.ca website, and in there's tons of information on it. This slide here is in here. There are detailed There's detailed information in here on how to make the ramps, and that information would be going to the individuals or the groups that would be tasked with making the ramps. The business owners, once the business owners have taken a look at whether they would like to volunteer for this program, they would apply to us using a form that they would have to fill out. There's a requirement that the entranceway is a single step, as Ann had indicated before, and a maximum of 6 inches high. Once the businesses indicate that they would like a ramp, measurements would be taken, given to the volunteers that are going to make the ramps. The ramps would be made and painted, and then delivered to the various owners that wanted them. We would also deliver a sign for the front window or the door. One of the people that I had talked to that did have a ramp, or does have a ramp, is they installed a wireless buzzer rather than have people call into a number, and I thought that was an excellent idea. Again, this is from that handbook that I showed you, and it just kind of shows the steps on taking measurements of the entranceway. The colors on the right are the colors that the ramps would be painted. The reason that Stopgap itself would like to have fairly colorful ramps is because they'd be noticeable around the town. People would notice them, they'd see the Stopgap stencil on the ramps, and it would hopefully get people aware of accessibility and give them an awareness of accessibility problems in general. On liability, there's sort of two cases here. The business owner would assume ownership of the ramp and liability for the ramp. In some cases, the ramp may be located on town property, and in that case, the town of Saugeen Shores is named as an additional insurer on the owner's insurance policy. The image on the right is the sign that Stopgap has in order to put in on the windows. It would have a place to put the phone number to call. So if individuals wanted the ramp out, they would call that number and somebody would put the ramp out. We've been working with the Chamber of Commerce and the BIAs. It's important to us that we communicate with both organizations, and we're doing that so that we can hopefully get their buy-in, hopefully have them help us to communicate to the business community. And we were supposed to have had a meeting with the Southampton BIA, but that particular one was canceled because of weather, and so we're hoping that that will be rescheduled. What will we achieve? As I indicated, the colored ramps will hopefully spur people on when they see them to become aware of accessibility issues, and help improvement in the accessibility issues. In the website, there's a list actually of communities that have gone up and running with this particular project. There's also a huge list of businesses that have these ramps installed. And a while ago, I talked to about 80 of those businesses, and I would say that 95% of them were very happy with the ramps. About 50% of those businesses put the ramp out at the beginning of the business day and took it in at the end of the business day. The other half of the people just put the ramp out as requested. Again, Kincardine has recently indicated that they got approval to install these ramps, and I believe it's for about 4 or 5 businesses. Those are some of the municipalities that have the stopgap program in place. And there's a list of a bunch of others that I saw just the other day. It goes anywhere from Halifax to Prince George out in BC. So, 2 things that our committee was looking for from this presentation was get approval from the council for the project itself, and secondly, to get approval for a budget for approximately $600 in order to purchase material for the first 5 or 6 ramps that hopefully will be put into place. Any questions?
Thanks very much, Bill. Any questions? And Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the entire Accessibility Committee for coming out. This is a great idea. Certainly there's a couple of businesses that have ramps that come in and out, but these are very colorful, they're bright. I think they'll do more than just provide access. They are educational, and they look kind of fun too. So I just don't want to see us kind of just let this one ride. So I'm just looking to you, Mr. Mayor, for advice on how we proceed to the next step and have a discussion about giving the nod to the program. The budget idea is a little different. I don't believe this committee has very much of a budget at all, so we would have to find money for that, correct?
Yeah, I think there is some money. There is some money available to them, but I think that's part of the discussion. I think for $600, don't think that's a great big challenge for this committee to come up with. I think that the path forward, though, really is, and I appreciate it. We can certainly indicate committee tonight that we certainly support this, and I don't think there's anybody around the table that wouldn't support it. But we'll ask staff to come back with a. We'll get you. You're not supporting it? No. I'm just kidding. I should be careful, but we'll get staff to come back with a report and with the money that they're. And it'll probably be in the next couple of weeks, but you can be assured that you have our support, and we really appreciate the work that the committee does. I don't want to say anything. Any other questions? Did you have a question, Cheryl? Sorry.
Make a comment that having been on the Accessibility Committee, I know that Bill has in particular done a lot of legwork on this, a lot of research, a lot of talking to people, calls with Luke and discussions, and so I just want to recognize in particular, Bill, your leadership on this issue, because I think this has been on the agenda in every committee meeting we've had. It's been a very thorough discussion. Doug did all kinds of research about materials, and you know, everybody's contributed to it, and I really am thrilled that looks like we're going ahead with it, because I think it's a great idea. Thanks.
Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, and I think any time we can make our buildings more accessible to those with varying abilities, disabilities, however we might want to say it, I think the quicker we can do it, the better, for sure. I did have 2 questions. What has been the response from the, you mentioned you haven't had the meeting with the Southampton BIA yet, but with the Port Elgin BIA, my first question is, what's the response from the BIA? Do you have anything in writing saying they support, not support? Secondly, from a maintenance perspective, once they're created, the ramps, you get paint fading and so on and so forth, and appearance. Who's responsible to maintain the ramps once they need to be replenished, refurbished? So my 2 questions for the BIA and maintenance.
I would say that the BIA in general was very supportive of it. I'm not sure if we've heard anything official back from them. I don't know if Tracy knows or anything. But at the meeting that we had, they seemed to be quite supportive of the program. As far as maintenance of the ramps, that was one of the questions that I asked the people that I talked to, the businesses that used it. And some of them The initial ramps that were built, one of the things that the initial ramps that were built, I don't know if they were painted as well as they could have been, or if they used a particular paint or not. Again, in the Stopgap website, on the materials that are used, they have particular materials that they suggest should be bought from Home Depot. It's a Behr paint, B-E-H-R paint. And it's they use that because it's a good paint. And it gets a double coat. There's small feet on the bottom on each corner of the ramp so that it sits up a little bit from the pavement. And so it doesn't get, it reduces anyway the moisture that the ramp would be subjected to. Some of the people said that they did have a problem with the ramp, but I think it was the older ones. The people that had the newer ones, I asked them all how it was maintained and how well it stood up. And I don't think there were anyone that indicated that they were having a problem in that regard. Some of the people had these ramps for over 5 years. So they didn't seem to have any major problem with it. Now, what Doug gave me here is, this is the labels for the paints that are used. And as I say, it's available at Home Depot. It says, give all surfaces good coat of deck over, it's called. And they indicate that it's available at Home Depot. So those are probably that's probably the paint that we would be using for these.
Okay, well, again, thank you very much, Ann and Bill, and I can assure you we'll be looking to staff to bring a report probably at the next meeting, and you can be assured that you have our support, and thank you for the work that the committee does. Thanks for the committee coming out this evening. Thank you. The next item or delegation is Pierre Donidi and Brad Scott. They're representing the Pumpkin Fest Committee, and they're here for an update and some new ideas about Pumpkin Fest. Welcome, Brad and Pierre.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We came to you at the end of last year and had some updates for you and things we were thinking about doing. At the end of last year, we started a strategic plan. It was a 5-year plan in its initial form. And part of that was how we bring the festival back together. There's been a disconnect, sort of, between the car show and the downtown core and the village, the main village up at the high school site. So we wanted to try and figure out how we could bring those two events back together to be one large event that more people would see, because we know there's a lot of people downtown that don't make it up, and vice versa. So our options that we came up with were to stay the way we have been, and the other option was to figure out how to move forward and bring everything together. You were all provided with a letter that we provided to the town senior management department, who, by the way, support us as long as we can come up with logistical solutions to any issues they come up with. So at this point, we're working on the plan of moving forward for our 30th anniversary to reconnect the two Pumpkin Fest events downtown. And it's a big undertaking, but it's one we're hoping, with the support of council, we have the support of the town, and we have the support of our board and our staff, that it's one we can make happen. That's all I had for you. It's exciting. We're all very excited about the possibility. A little scary at the same time, because it is going to be a big move for us. But it's one we are embracing for our 30th anniversary. And I know Pierre wants to say something on behalf of the chamber as well, so I'll let him speak now.
Thanks, Brad. Don't take our professional demeanor to mean that we're not very excited by this. We think it's going to be the real defining change in Pumpkin Fest. It's ironic because the festival started in town and then eventually migrated up. Our number one goal, every enterprise needs refreshing sometimes, and I think Pumpkin Fest is no different. I will say the festival is the envy of many communities our size in southwestern Ontario, so we have a gem that, as I've said in the past before you, we need to make investments in. But our beyond the longevity of the festival for another 30 years, the other thing that we really wanted to do is, and we had sensed that there had been, and we talked to lots of people in the community, there had been a disconnect between the community and the festival. It was like a marriage. We were growing apart, and we want to get a little bit closer with the community, and we think bringing the festival in its entirety back downtown is a big step in taking that. We wanted to do things correctly. We wanted to come before you. We've talked to management committee. Once we're done here, we want to talk to the BIA and make sure they're on board completely. And if they have any suggestions and any activities they want to help participate with us, we're really looking forward to that. And we're going to probably double, if not more, the number of bodies walking through downtown Port Elgin, which is going to be a significant impact, and we only think that will eventually just bring more buy-in from the community at large, and really give the festival a big shot in the arm. That's all I have.
Thanks very much, Pierre and Brad. Any questions? I'm sure there's some questions. I'll scare one out here. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Pierre and Brad. Appreciate you guys being in here tonight and bringing us that information. As somebody who's volunteered at Pumpkin Fest for now nearly 10 years, actually, I think it's a great concept, and I think bringing the festival downtown has a lot of strong potential to make the whole event more exciting. To have more people all in one place, all celebrating that event together, and get more people in watching us weigh pumpkins, probably, which would be fun. And I think you're on the right track. What I would really encourage, and you mentioned it there, and I just reiterate it again, is the importance of bringing in the BIA. I know one thing that, and you mentioned it, the disconnect between the community and the event, which I think is maybe an accurate depiction. And one area where there's always been a bit of tension is between the business community and the festival about the benefits of the festival and how it works for business in downtown Port Elgin. So I think it's real important, and I think you'll get the buy-in. I just think it's real important for you to consult with the BIA closely, to get the buy-in from those business owners, as many of them as you can, and to get that and to work with them, because there's so much potential for businesses in that festival. You bring all those people downtown, thousands of people walking past their storefronts, but it's a question of working together, the Pumpkin Fest Committee, the Chamber of Commerce, the BIA, and the individual business owners, and figuring out how to leverage those opportunities that are there for those business owners, and how to put cash in their tills, frankly, as a result of this event, because that's its core purpose, its original reason for being, was to be a shoulder season event to bring people to town in October to put money in the pockets of business owners. So I think you're on the right track. I think it's a great thing, and I just really reiterate and encourage you to bring those business owners on side, and if you do that, I think it'll be even all that much better. So thanks for coming in, and I really appreciate the initiative that you guys are showing to try and breathe some new life into the event and to keep it viable for another, we're 30 years next year, so another 30 years from now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Nothing else. Thanks very much. I guess the way this proceeds again is, and I know our staff has worked very closely with you in the past, and that's what we can assure you that they will do that in the future. And I think it's a great idea, and good luck with it.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
So the next delegation is Jeff Carver. He's chairman of the Port Elgin BIA, and he's here on a budget and an update on special events. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it as brief as I can. I know some of these council meetings have turned into marathon sessions. So quickly, I guess, and firstly is the topic of the petting zoo and a road closure come Easter weekend last year. Or the last time we were here for a deputation. Speaking to council and recapping some of the events of the past year, it was recommended by council that we close the road for safety reasons for the Easter petting zoo. So last week we met with the new Director of Public Works, handed in an application applying for the road closure, and we're coming here today asking for council to support its own idea. And make sure that we keep those safety concerns in mind and we continue to execute what was and will be a very successful event. So that's the first item. Second, we have brought a copy of our budget here for review, questions, that sort of thing. And I think I'll be alluding to that a little bit later as well. The farmers market itself, we at the same meeting with the Director of Public Works talked to him about the road closure in general throughout the summer season, making some concessions to cut back on the amount of overtime that was required by staff for the closure, shifting the hour back to the 2 p.m. to help alleviate some of the costs associated with the market. He was very excited and happy about that concession, and Len is very much looking forward to working with the BIA on what has turned into a really fantastic weekly event throughout the summer in downtown Port Elgin. Last year, you will remember, I asked for one more year for the market to go without fees being due to the town, to help us, I guess, continue to grow the event and the market in general. This year, I want to make good on the commitment from last year, and the BIA is prepared to offer almost 50% of the revenue that we bring in to the town to help offset some of the staff costs that are associated with the market. We met with Linda White as well, bouncing this idea and the flat rate off her, and we certainly received a kind of a favorable response. That would be $1,250 that we would turn over to the town for the time and effort it takes to help us put on the great event. The total revenue, I believe, and the budget will verify this, is I think last year was $3,000. So we figure it's a kind of a fair number to meet at. As well, at the end of the season, we could assess the amount of electricity used in the space for the vendors, and also contribute to help offset that cost as well. So that's the proposal that I'm hoping that council will support. I guess finally, or one of the last items here is, and this is something that we discussed, I think it was just 2 meetings ago with the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and a fantastic idea that has gained a ton of traction down in the States in a little town in Tennessee, and it is called a farm-to-table dinner. A really exciting event, and one that there is an article that we distribute amongst the committee. I believe it's included with some of the committee minutes. If not, I can forward that article on to council, so you guys can read it at your leisure. But the idea behind it is that you take the folks that are participating in the farmers market, you close down the street, you set up a massive table down the middle of the road, and you have people come in and buy tickets and come in for dinner in the downtown, eating local produce, local meats, and taking advantage of some of our local wineries, craft breweries, and that sort of thing. The money then goes back into enhancing the downtown and the farmers market. So it's a really neat little concept. We have already met with the health department. In fact, the health inspector has volunteered to be part of the organizing committee. They're that excited about the idea and think that it deserves that kind of attention. We have reached out to the Alcohol and Gaming Commission and are meeting with them at the end of the month. And it's actually one of the only times I've seen a liquor inspector excited. So we may be off to the races there. And with council's endorsement and approval of the event, we'd also like to set up a meeting with Police Services Chief Dan Rivet to receive his endorsement, as well as any comments or questions that he might have concerning the event. So I think we have all of our bases covered there. The last small item I'm asking for from council tonight is that council again endorse the project or the pilot program that the Alcohol and Gaming Commission has in place for the sale of wine at the farmers market. The exciting news this year is that that may be expanding to include craft breweries. So, given the fact that we now have a fantastic craft brewery within the town of Saugeen Shores, we are hopeful that's the case, and we're also hopeful that council will yet again endorse the farmers market to sell wine and possibly beer this year. And that is all I've got.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Questions? Councillor Grease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jeff, I'm just so pleased to see the quick turnaround on the dinner. That's incredible. So thank you for all your work on that.
Yeah, no sense wasting time. I think it's a great event. I think it's going to be a great community event, and certainly it's local food and local wine and local beer. It's not, I don't think we'll have a hard time getting people involved.
Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I get to talk with Jeff lots of times because we're on the Economic Advisory Committee together, and we've come up with some of these ideas. And I just think it's great. Jeff is our chair, and you do a great job in putting all these things together, and particularly the farmers market. I think last year was the second year, and
fourth. I think this might be the fifth year. Yeah.
It's certainly gained traction, and it's the detractors that we heard from in the early days, we don't hear from anymore. People can still find the beach on Wednesday. So I'm glad of that, and I think adding more vendors every time that I went in the past couple of years, it just seemed to get bigger and bigger and more popular, and I look forward to Wednesdays to go down there. And I'm looking forward to this farm dinner, and I'm looking forward to all the other great stuff that we've got planned.
Well, it's exciting because one of the connections that you helped us make with the Economic Development Committee with Pat Gilson, he's obviously going to be hopefully very much part of the dinner itself and organizing. So it's again bringing more people in the community together. So thank you.
Hopefully we can find a good produce supplier in the area.
Something tells me we'll be able to track someone down.
Kind of rare. Councillor Mike Myatt.
Mayor. Jeff, I just want to, it's more of a comment, I just want to congratulate you for continuing to bring some very exciting events to this community. You're one heck of a promoter and doing wonderful work for Saugeen Shores. And I know this is a little far removed. I haven't had a chance to congratulate you on your Charlie Kelly Award. That's a very prestigious award. I happened to serve on the Winter Carnival Committee with Charlie Kelly back in the 70s and 80s. I'm getting a little older here, but terrific individual, and so I knew him very well, know what that award's all about, and to be chosen to win that award really says a lot about the good work you do with promotions. So, and I know it's all for the betterment of the community, and I just want to thank you for that, and keep the events coming, because I'll continue to support the events where I can, and if they all make sense, but keep the events coming and keep up the great work. You really do fantastic work.
Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, I guess just to reply, the special event is on the council agenda tonight, so you'll get an answer to that later this evening. The rest of it, I think, we'll bring back to a staff report fairly soon, and certainly before the first date of the market.
Yeah.
And you should get that pretty rapidly.
Yeah, and just to give us as much time as possible, we do have a tentative date scheduled for August 12th, Friday night. So it. Given time frames and that sort of thing.
For the dinner, yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah. So whatever can be done on that end,
sure.
That'd be greatly appreciated.
Yep. I'm sure we'll get that worked out.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
The next item on the agenda is a Community Services, Parks and Recreation staff report. No, it's Environmental Services and Transportation. Sorry, I got the wrong agenda up here. Planning and Development. Yeah, Planning and Development is a staff report on drinking water source protection plan revisions, and our manager, Development Services, Bart Toby, will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Further to the February 29th, 2016 Committee of Whole discussion, the town has received and attached a correspondence from the MOECC outlining the revisions that have been processed. Staff recommend Council consider the resolution here outlined herein. Financial impact. Full impact of the proposed changes arising from the Source Protection Plan will be discussed at a future staff report on implementation of the plan. However, it should be noted that this fund will be made available to town. The funds will be made available to the town to assist in implementation of the first year.
Thank you, Bart. Then the recommendation is that Council consider the following. Pursuant to Section 34(3) of the Clean Water Act 2006, the Town of Saugeen Shores endorses the proposed amendments to the Source Protection Plan of the Saugeen, Grey Sauble, and North Bruce Peninsula Source Protection Regions to address significant drinking water threats for fuel storage near Great Lakes intakes. Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I asked the clerk to put this item back on the agenda this evening, largely because of the last line in the last paragraph in that letter from the ministry. We look forward to submission of your amended source protection plan in the coming weeks. It's important to note that 3 municipalities have been offered source protection municipal implementation funding that is contingent on the province having received an amended source protection plan. The province is effectively, well, the director is saying that regardless of the process, if you don't submit this plan, if you want to submit it, then you're not going to get the money. And I thought that it was important for council to have that document and have the opportunity to decide whether or not you want to proceed with this under those circumstances. I still, my opinion has not changed. I still cannot support this amendment under the current situation. The argument put forward above in that letter suggesting that because they were the amendments or the technical work was done under Section 22 before the plan passed means that Section 34 doesn't come into effect is specious. It's erroneous. It's not true. And the director admits as much. They say that there's nothing in the Act that says that's the case. And so and they say that that's because the legislature didn't envision this circumstance when they wrote the Act, which is much like speeding down the highway at 150 kilometers an hour, and when the police pull you over and charge you under the Highway Traffic Act, saying, well, the legislature didn't envision my specific circumstances when they drafted the Highway Traffic Act, and therefore it doesn't apply to me. Anyway, you know my position on the process. It hasn't been completed. You can't do anything pursuant to Section 34 when the Section 34 of the Act hasn't been met. When it hasn't been done correctly, you can't act under that section as far as I'm concerned. So, and the problem with it all is, and it seems arcane, but what it boils down to is this, that when you have a bad process, you're very likely to end up with a bad result. And you need to have, the province envisioned a certain level of consultation, both at the Source Protection Authority level and a certain order of consultation for municipal government, and they haven't permitted that to happen in this case. And as a result, there's no way to know, in my opinion, that the amendment as proposed meets the requirements of the Clean Water Act, or that it is necessary or even advisable under the Clean Water Act. And and then there's so many. I have so many issues with this. It's hard to express them all. But I mean, you only have to look at the technical work that was done. All these amendments are based on a model that says that fuel might possibly reach our intake if more than 24,500 liters of fuel happens to spill during the 100-year storm. That's the model. And on that basis, we're going to impose all of this regulation on all these small business owners, all of these people. They're going to face another set of bureaucrats coming in their door once a year to tell them, to give them lots of advice, I'm sure, and to have them fill out more paperwork and more paperwork. And in my view, it's not clear whether we're doing anything more than protecting those people from having a few minutes more of a personal life in their day, rather than protecting the water. It isn't clear to me that this does anything to protect the water from fuel spills, or protect our intake from fuel spills. it isn't clear to me. I can't really assess it one way or the other because the process hasn't been effectively executed. So it's impossible to draw that conclusion from my perspective. And there's so many questions raised by the document that are unanswered because the process has been poor that I just there's no way I can support it in its current state. So my suggestion to council would be to advise the Source Protection Authority that we simply can't come to a conclusion on this pursuant to Section 34 and to forward that view to the Minister, along with a request that the funding be extended until the process can be executed appropriately. That would be my preference. It's up to council what you'd like to do, but I can't support the recommendation as presented. My suggestion would be to set it aside and do that instead, but look forward to hearing council's comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Over here with Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would just start by saying that everything that the Deputy Mayor talked about, I understand. I've been through all of this, and I understand, and I agree that the process is flawed. I have an objection to this from a different angle, and that being that provincial tax revenue is being spent on this program, and I brought this up at every opportunity, including the open house upstairs, that this does nothing to protect the source water of myself and many of the people in Saugeen Township who derive their water from private wells. So the model that we use is taxes that are put towards drinking water and sewers are those monies derived from the use of those fees, and this is in direct contravention to that, so on that basis I would not be supporting this either.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a number of questions about this, but I wanted to just respond to one of the points that the Deputy Mayor brought up about the report that he sent out to us at about 5 o'clock this afternoon. I just had a chance to scan it quickly, so I don't have a deep reading of it, but some of the things that it pointed out were, in response to your concern about, Deputy Mayor, about the fact that an incident like this might be unlikely. I think one of the things, the terms in there is about a 100-year storm. I just did some quick research on this. And I think all of us probably know that that 100-year storm concept is probably not exactly 100 years anymore. Just in July 2013, we had flash flooding in Toronto where 10 centimeters of rain fell in 2 hours. Between 2003 and 2013, Canada had 9 storm event-related disasters with damages surpassing $500 million Canadian each. Before that, there were only 3 Canadian disasters that exceeded that amount. That might be partially due to inflation, but a 2003 Environment Canada report says that mean precipitation across Canada had increased up to 2003 by 12%. So what I'm saying is, for us to just say that a 100-year storm event is only going to happen very, very rarely. I don't think we can count on that anymore, if that's one of our issues. The other thing, I know it based the modeling, I read that on 22,500 liter spill, and that report was published in 2014. And so I've asked the question, maybe Bart, you know this, I don't know. Did that report include the new Max Milk gas station? Because I only saw one fuel source marked on the map, and it was labeled as being an Albert Street source. And I wondered what the amount at the Max Milk was, because now it would not be permitted to be built under the new regulations, I believe. But I guess what my conclusion on that is just that I don't think that that event is really unlikely, as unlikely as it might seem. And the other thing that the report said is that under their modeling, if there was a spill like that, the Southampton intake, the old and the new intakes, would both exceed the current Ontario drinking water standards. Not by a lot, but it would. And I'm concerned. I think that anything we can do to protect our water source, our drinking water source, we have a very high standard as public officials. Our duty is very, very high. I don't see it as a frivolous thing. And in terms of the argument about source water, why should we be concerned about the source water at an intake? It's for the public good of our town. If there's a spill in our main intake source, even people who are living out in the township, it's still going to affect our businesses in town if we don't have good drinking water for our restaurants and other services. So I think we need to consider the whole public good of the town, not just I understand your point about the wells, but I have a concern about the public good. I also just wonder, what are our long-term repercussions if we don't act on this? So, those are my comments. Thank you.
Vice Devonor Huber.
Well, I had the exact same question that the councillor to the left of me ended off with. If we don't do this, and what are the long-term repercussions? I'm just curious. I know that we have two members on the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority board, and that this has, I think, been a pretty big discussion there from looking at the minutes, and I greatly respect the 2 or 3 times that the Deputy Mayor has given us a much better understanding of this whole process than you would glean from just reading the bits and pieces that are generally put before us. I understand the concept of you don't want to create unnecessary work or extra work for a business owner. I am curious to know, though, if somebody is running their business properly and if somebody is doing all of the things that they're supposed to be doing under the Technical Safety Authority rules and regulations, how onerous would another form to fill out really be? I guess I'm just curious to know, is there fundamentally, through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps to the Deputy Mayor, is there a fundamental difficulty with some of what they're asking for there that would be something that would go above and beyond what they should be doing anyway? I'm just curious, because I understand what you're saying about the process. I get that. However, we weren't included in the first round through with this source water stuff, and so they're picking up the 3 communities now along the way, and I think it is just kind of catching up to include us. So I understand what you're saying about the process, but are there any other things in there that would really be a disadvantage to us? Because I think a business that's running the way that it's supposed to, and they're storing fuel properly, and they're doing whatever they can do. Another form that you would literally just do a check every now and again, I don't see how that would be a bad thing. I just wouldn't mind an extra comment about that. And like Councillor Grace, if we don't do this, are there any long-term ramifications that we should be aware of right now?
Perhaps we'll go to Bart first, and then we'll go to you. Perhaps you can comment, or I don't. Maybe should have warned you, but don't.
We're one of approximately 11 municipalities that are playing catch-up through this program. There's about half a dozen or less sites in Saugeen Shores that are going to be affected through this. I can't tell you specifically if Maximum Milk and Southampton are part of the process, but I do know that we did talk to them about it, so it's not outside the realm that, they're well aware of that. I think the regulatory regulatory authority here, the kind of the speak that I've read and understand it being is that they're going to help people through this process. Thumb down, white knuckle type of ordeal. But I can't say that. I just did, but that's I mean, as far as the, what Luke's talking about in the getting the shoe before the cart or the cart before the horse, I mean, I can't speak to that either. I mean, that's outside of my realm. But it is what it is, and I'll push it forward.
Go ahead, Luke. I'm sure you got a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's what's hilarious about this whole thing. I mean, the Vice Deputy Mayor is quite accurate. That, yes, they already fill in a whole bunch of forms. There are already 11 statutes in Ontario that regulate this, and it's in evidence. That's in evidence by the fact that this has never happened before. I mean, they cannot. I've asked them when they stood there, and they sent me an email back of instances where fuel has spilled. Fuel spills. There's lots of examples of that. Fuel spilling out of a tank, but it goes about 100 yards in each direction, and before they catch it, they can't find one example where 22,500 liters of fuel has spilled, where it's much less than that every time. 7,000 liters of fuel spilling is bad, super bad, and that's happened, but it's not 22,500, and no matter how often the 100-year storm happens, if they never spill more than 22,500 liters of fuel, it never happens. So, yes, they're already heavily regulated. I mean, that's an accurate point. And so how many times do you re-regulate the same thing? At what point does that become onerous? At what point does that become excessive? And it does. And what the province has demonstrated here is that for them, there's never such thing as too much regulation unless that regulation happens to restrict whatever they want to do, in which case they're more than happy to sweep it right out of the way. And I think that this is an example of a moment where we have to decide where the line should be drawn. And what's really unfortunate too is that this process, this badly executed process, has led to the conclusion that Bart has just given, unfortunately, and we've gotten the sense that this is inevitable, that there's no getting around this, that there's some penalty or something that's going to happen to us if we don't put this through. The legislation puts us, municipalities, and the Source Protection Authority in the driver's seat on these amendments. And yet we've been excluded to the point where this consultation has all happened, and we've been left with the impression that that this is just going to happen, and you better get on board because it's just going to happen. So it's really not very good. And I think that we need to, I just want to be real clear about this because I know this is complicated, and the Councillor Grace's comments are well taken. That we have an important responsibility for the water, and each individual around this council table has to decide where they want to draw that line. I'm trying to give you the conclusions I've drawn by being directly involved. My opinion is that I can't support these, but each of you, I think, has to decide whether what I'm saying is convincing, whether you believe that this is necessary, and certainly draw that conclusion for yourselves, because it's very important that we make informed decisions on the safety of the water. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Luke. I think, did you have a comment, Mike? None? Yes, go back, Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Just as a follow-up through you to the CAO, Larry, have we received, they've got a comment here that 3 municipalities have been offered Source Protection Municipal Implementation Funding. Do we know how much they offered us? Are we talking is this the money to put up a few signs, or is it more than that?
No, it's quite broad, I think, and I think the goal is to offset our initial implementation costs because it will happen mid-year if the plan amendment is ultimately approved. So when you say it's quite broad, are we talking $100,000? Are we talking $10,000? I think it would more than offset the impact to the 6 or so properties that are actually going to be impacted here in Saugeen Shores.
The money would have been to develop a risk management plan so that we understand, or we have a plan for this event, and we have to have an officer also, a risk officer who would then give you some advice on the plan. When and if you get another application for another fuel storage facility in the capture zone, as they call it.
It would also deal with any revisions to the existing
Okay. I think, okay, Councillor Rich.
Mr. Mayor, my question I think will be for the Deputy Mayor. To me, what the Vice Deputy Mayor said is the key, right? So how much money are we going to lose if we don't do this, and can they force us to do it? And I'm still not 100% clear. It kind of sounds like they can force us to do it, and then in the end they won't give us the money, but we don't know exactly how much that's going to be, right? So
that's how I was going to encapsulate. Councillor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, everybody's had a go, so I thought I'd just add I'm going to support Luke in his efforts to stop onerous government this time and make it quite clear that I still want to protect the water, and I guess I don't want to protect it at any and all costs, because it might actually cost us something anyway in the future when we're told to do it. But right now I think it's a good point that Luke is bringing forward, and he has my support. Thank you.
Okay, I just comment. We've had a lot of speech on it, but realistically, I think you're going to see this implemented, regardless of what we do tonight. And so I think you need to be faced with that fact. I don't think that lady that stood there a month ago is not going to give up on this, nor is the Ministry of Environment. They are going to implement this. It is unfortunate. I absolutely agree with you, Luke, that it's unfortunate how this all unfolded when the original plan was submitted, and after that they came up with this other criteria on these intakes. And it looked to my mind, and I know Luke and I have had this discussion, they looked to me like they sat down and crafted criteria that would capture our intakes. And I agree with them. I think they're almost impossible that you're ever going to see that happen. But having said that, I am convinced that we will see this implemented, regardless of what we do tonight. And I think you raised a very good question there, Luke. I think it really comes down to, I suspect, that last line is finances, because they have the stick. And if we don't play the game, I suspect we'll lose the finances. So there's really what this will be about, I suspect. In any case, I think we've had very good discussion about that. And I'm ready to, if there's no others, then I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda then is the Community Services, Parks and Recreation Staff Report, and it has to do with the awarding of a consultant work for the preparation of a Recreation Master Plan, and our Director, Jane, will present.
Thank you. Staff received Council approval in the fall of 2015 to prepare and issue an RFP for the preparation of a master plan. The project is included in the approved 2016 capital budget. The scope of the work is included in my report. A total of 5 proposals were received for the project, with prices ranging from $28,000 up to $52,000. A subcommittee of the Recreation and Active Transportation Advisory Committee, including a cross-section of recreation and leisure key stakeholders, was convened to critique the applications. The terms of the RFP are also included in my report. Several key rating factors were issued to determine which firm would be awarded the contract, such as experience, personnel, understanding of the request for proposal, technical credibility, understanding of the area in question, and the ability to complete the project on time. The selection committee met with and received presentations from 3 shortlisted consulting firms. Although pleased with the content of all 3 presenters, it was subsequently concluded by the group that the proposal submitted by Monteith Brown, which scored the highest in the initial evaluation, would be recommended. And Monteith Brown will provide the background literature, demographic analysis, identification of existing assets of programs, an environmental scan, and meaningful community engagement, all required within the scope of the work. The evaluation team is confident Monteith Brown will provide the town with a thorough plan completed within the approved budget allocation, while working closely with not only staff but with the community throughout the process.
Thank you, Jane. Then the recommendation is that the consulting firm firm of Monteith Brown be engaged at a cost of $46,725 plus applicable taxes for the preparation of a recreation master plan for the town of Saugeen Shores. Questions, comments? Councillor Mike Myatt.
Just 2 or 3 questions, Mr. Mayor, for Mike. Through you to Mr. Mayor, to Jane. Jane, the start date, completion date, who makes up the technical review committee? And when it comes to fees and charges study, what 10 communities will be used to determine, to do comparable rates? Who will choose those communities, and who makes up the technical review committee?
So start date obviously will be once approved through council. End date, as identified in the RFP, our goal is for the end of September to have a report to council as well. The technical committee has been will continue to be the steering group that's been part of this process, which is a number of key stakeholders from the community. And sorry, your final question was the 10 communities in question. That will be decided with the consultant themselves. Will be part of the process through the entire way. The steering committee will be.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jane, actually my question has to do with part of our correspondence that came from the county. I'm not sure if you were able to read that or not, but it was talking about the changes that are coming down with Bill 73. And in particular, one of the things that it talks about is the alternative parkland dedication process. And it recommends that the town, it says the town would have to review its parks and rec strategy and determine whether changes to its approach are needed. So I guess my question is that something that would be included in the tasks that would be part of the master plan? It seems like it would be a logical place for it.
Yeah, although not specifically identified in the RFP, those are certainly conversations that we can have with Monteith Brown. They have a considerable amount of knowledge in that area, and while here we will certainly advise them on that process.
I don't think that's a real onerous part of this to justify that. But it's a good point to raise because it was nice to have it in place. And we'll have no questions. Councillor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question to Jane would be to ask if the waterfront is inclusive or exclusive of this plan.
The waterfront will not be part of this plan.
Follow up then. I'm trying to remember what they're called. The Saugeen Shores Athletic Group, is that what they're called?
Correct. The social club?
Group?
Mm-hmm.
So they are a recreational group using waterfront facilities.
The RFP included programming opportunities, not specific to the waterfront.
Thank you.
Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Just as a comment, what Councillor Grace raised, I think I mentioned a couple months ago, but it's about a parks plan. So, you know, we sort of have a little bit of that in here. It's lending itself towards that. And also just in response to what Councillor Minaj just said, I think all three of the candidates that we interviewed were aware of and interested in, and in fact took us sometimes in a direction that some of us hadn't thought about yet, about sport tourism. So, you know, the idea of opportunities in the community associated with that, I think will be part of this, and that may very well, you know, be the beach volleyball tournaments or the hockey tournaments, whatever. So, as much as the waterfront isn't specifically there, like there are some elements of programming that would pick up on different locations in the community, and the sport tourism thing is something that I hadn't given a great deal of thought to, and learned a lot from all three of the interviews, and look forward to that discussion taking place, because that represents great opportunities here.
Councillor Minaj.
Thank you for the second opportunity. Just the thought that for the longest time, and it is in the waterfront master plan, the consideration that the waterfront be deemed a park. And it has trails, it has recreational opportunities, and I don't need to bore you with more details, but at some point maybe this study could look at the viability or the inclusiveness of the waterfront, 18.5 kilometers actually constituting a park, and look at it from that focus. Thank you.
I think that's a good point, and don't forget it. But I think you'll have every opportunity to, if you want, I would say, attend those meetings and raise that point, because there's going to be some lots of public consultation. So, very good. Thank you. So, Councillor Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And continuing with what you just said there, each of the consultant groups has vast input. They'll be asking for a lot of input from the community, both by surveys and meetings. So it's not that the steering committee itself will be directing them. They'll be taking their lead from what the community wants, what they believe the needs of the community are, and that's what we hope to be bringing forward. Thank you.
Very good, and good luck with it if this passes. So I'll ask the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. So the next item then is Community Services, Parks and Recreation staff report. It is a 1-year agreement with the Chamber of Commerce, and again, Jane is going to present.
The town of Saugeen Shores has agreed upon a service contract with the Chamber of Commerce for a number of years for the operation of the business office, the Tourism Information Centre in Port Elgin and Southampton. The Chamber has provided community promotions, special events planning, and marketing and support services. Staff has been working with the existing tenants of the Southampton Town Hall to coordinate a cultural hub in which the tenants are able to assist one another in the services they offer. This has supported the tourism office, in which volunteers from the Southampton Arts Society has been able to assist patrons seeking tourism advice during times when the tourism office is not staffed. The tourism office has installed a customer phone that is directly linked to the Port Elgin Tourism Office to answer more complex questions that visitors may have. This shift has reduced the amount of staff required in the Southampton office, but at the same time provides the same level of service visitors have become accustomed to. These additional savings from a potential share and delivery of services will be considered for supplementary marketing opportunities where available. The recently accepted organizational review recognized a potential shift in the delivery of tourism. Currently, municipal staff has been involved with high-priority items identified within the review and will continue to review the recommendations identified with tourism within the coming months.
Thank you, Jane. And the recommendation is that Council considers passing a bylaw to authorize a 1-year agreement with the Saugeen Shores Chamber of Commerce for the provision of visitor services, visitor information, community promotion, special events planning, and marketing support services effective April the 1st, 2016, expiring March 31st, 2017. Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Jane. I just wondering, I mean, the last paragraph talks about the org review and the shift in service delivery for tourism. And I know I raised this last year, or maybe I don't know if I've raised it even every year, that we've had a 1-year agreement with the Chamber of Commerce. I hope that, can you make some comments? Are we working toward getting to a point where we can have a longer term agreement? And I think we need to have, once we get our own economic development person in place, we need to have a reassessment of the roles various people, various organizations are going to play in this business. And so that's important. And so having a 1-year agreement at this stage probably makes sense so that we can do that reconception of how it's going to work. But I mean, I'm hopeful that we will get to the point where we can have a longer term agreement with the Chamber, because I know, and this has been years now, we've talked about trying to give the Chamber more stability in understanding what their funding was going to look like and what their role is going to be, and we're still sort of giving them less, and for good reason. But is that the direction we're heading in, do you think?
Yeah, I think we'd all prefer to have a longer agreement. There's no doubt about it. But knowing that the organizational review is coming down the pipeline, so to speak, and has since our last agreement now been launched, I'll say, it's given us an opportunity to at least start the planning process, some very preliminary discussions, but allow us a year to have those discussions to see where we really should be within a year's time. It wasn't fair to rush it at this point. There's no doubt about it. As my report says, we had some higher priority items that we needed to deal with, and we're working our way through that. So there is a bit of a plucking order here, and it's certainly in that priority list to start those conversations.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take this opportunity through last year I've had the opportunity to work more with Joanne and her team, and boy, she just does such a great job, and she works so hard. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you, and yes.
Councillor Mike Myatt.
Mr. Mayor, my comment really is around the financial impact, 140,000, and it continues to amaze me how that number, with inflationary rates and Ontario Consumer Price Index in the last 5 years gone up between 6 and 8%, that $140,000 has stayed the same in the last 5 years or longer. And I guess my question to you, Mr. Mayor, to our CEO, is the $140,000 remaining the same for 5, 6, 7 years, I believe. Is that number presented by the chamber, who I think, by the way, do an excellent job for that dollar value, and the money is spread? Is that number that they present every year? Are they asked to keep it at the same number? Are we being a responsible council to ask? So where are we at with the 140? Why is there not at least a Ontario Consumer Price Index increase based built into that increase or that fee, Larry?
I think it's safe to say the chamber operates with a pretty fine pencil, and the town creates a lot of benefit as a result of that. And what Jane was trying to focus on in her report is, in fact, that we're going to spend a little bit less on wages this year, but provide the same level of service, but in fact enhance our marketing campaign. And that's something we've had a number of conversations with them about, is how do we redeploy those dollars in a different way to get more bang for our buck potentially. And I think there's some credit due to the chamber for the way they've organized it this year.
By saying, Mr. Mayor, I did want to congratulate the chamber for coming in with, I think, a very responsible budget every year, maintaining a $140,000 number for a good number of years. So I just wanted to thank you for the good work they do.
Well, they set a wonderful example for a number of other departments. Anyways. We have any further comments or questions? All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. The next item on the agenda is communications petitions for Committee of the Whole action, and we have a motion from the Township of Wainwright regarding renewable energy. And I guess we're looking for direction, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd move to note and file. I think I'm uncomfortable with particularly the recommendations giving direction to the province on energy, on capacity, the energy mix. These are items that are outside the sphere of municipal interest, and I think that I'm fairly convinced the province has its own ideas on that subject, whatever my views or council's views might be, and it's a matter that's outside of our jurisdiction anyway, so I would move to note and file.
You going to second that, Mike? Okay, all in favor? That's carried. Number of items for information there. I think there's 7 this evening, some minutes. Any comments on them? Vice Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, Huber, and then go ahead.
I just want to draw attention to number 2 on the list there about the changes to the Planning Act. We've talked a couple of times about making some adjustments with our Planning Advisory Committee, and my understanding of the changes in the Act would be that we can certainly move some of the function of the Planning Advisory Committee as it exists in this community right now to Committee of the Whole, to Council, but we would still have a requirement to maintain a Committee of Adjustment, which would be a committee that would respond to applications for minor variances. If I understand that correctly, I just would like us to proceed to at some point have an agenda item in the near future where we discuss our own going forward plan, because before we know it, it'll be December, and the current PAC is constituted until December. So by January, if we're going to make a change, that would be the opportunity I would suggest is the best planning. Thank you.
I think you were going to speak to that. Luke, go ahead.
I would just simply say I support what the Vice Deputy Mayor said and hope that it can come forward in short order. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank other comments. So there's a pile of them. We had a good discussion on it. They're not all there, and there's. I guess my comment to it was this is not going to make land use planning any simpler. It's going to make it, again, more complicated for people to go through this very complicated process when you go through all of the changes to this. And it is what it is. So, any other comments? If not, then we have one information report there. I don't know if you want to speak to it, Jane, or if there's any questions to it. It's on the splash pad.
Yeah, I can. Certainly, I would have liked to have brought a staff report for you this evening, but as you can see, we're still heavily involved with the process of a splash pad. So I provided you some information in response to the resolution in December that had 8 specific aspects. I briefly talk about the location, and we're still taking a look at some of our options for consideration for a location for the splash pad. We've done some investigation for some capital costs, and I provided you some costing for a potential splash pad, but there's some opportunities there for some shifting of fees and of costing, and I've identified that with reduction of some features, minimal features, and they can be phased in, the reduction of the size of the ice pad, and obviously some in-kind contributions would be associated through a campaign for sure. The operating considerations, we've talked to a number of municipalities that have splash pads already in their communities, and the operating costs really vary in those communities, but I've given you a bit of an example of what to expect. Insurance, there's no additional insurance requirements for a splash pad. And a little bit about the fundraising committee. The Splash Pad Committee has done a tremendous amount of work to date and has $130,000 in the bank, which is very impressive. And we certainly, with given council approval, would like to eventually work with them, get them on a great fundraising campaign, certainly having them execute it, but assist them throughout the way with our experience with doing fundraising campaigns. So there's just a little bit of information for you to review anyway about Splash Pad.
Thanks for the update. I'll start with Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Jane. Jane, first of all, I want to make a comment, and I have 3 questions. My comment is I continue to be very much in support of constructing a splash pad in this community, whether it happens in 2017 or 18, I guess remains to be seen. I'm very much still in support. My 3 questions of you, Jane. Do you see a Trillium application being submitted before the end of 2016 for this project, assuming, of course, we nail down the location, features, total costing, receipt of fundraising plan, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my first question, Jane, of you is do you see yourself as Director of Community Services making a recommendation to Council that the Trillium application for 2016, the first choice would be the splash pad? That's my first question. Secondly, is the Splash Pad Committee still on board? I did an interview with the press, media, back in December, and there was some apprehension, dissension amongst the ranks with the decision council made that night. And I had heard rumors maybe they weren't going to be around. Now I heard they're back on board, which is a great thing. So it's a positive. My second question is, are they still on board? And are they going to send to you and council their fundraising plan for 2016-17? When's that coming forward? What other plans? And thirdly, when exactly, Jane, do you think a location will be recommended to council? And I think I, for one, would like to see the project move forward sooner than later. But there's a lot of funds, to raise still. But those are the 3 questions, Jane. If I could have those addressed, Mr. Mayor.
I think I got 4, but I'll try and answer them for you. Obviously, yes, we will apply for a Trillium Foundation grant, as we will for any grants that we fit within the criteria, when we have the criteria available to us. Obviously, we don't want to apply too prematurely if we can't fit within the realm, because we want to make sure that we have success with those application processes. Is the committee still on board? Not sure about the rumors, but I can tell you they're certainly on board. We've met with them a number of times. We've brought in some experts in the field to meet with them as well. Had some really good conversations. They've been part of the decision-making process all along, probably watching on TV right now as I'm speaking, so they're fully aware of the report that was coming forward tonight as well. The fundraising campaign, how is their fundraising campaign going? As I indicated, they themselves have received $130,000 to date. We've identified some opportunities where we could seek some additional funds for them, working with them, and I think that's really key that, as I said before, we have the expertise to develop a fundraising campaign, but we rely on their human resources, I'll say, to help execute the fundraising campaign. So we'll be working in tandem with that. And then your first question, when will a location be recommended? We're certainly looking at some of our options right now. Don't want to jump on a location if it's not the most appropriate. And the locations that we've been looking at to date, we've gone through kind of a critiquing process for each one of them, and we certainly got it down to at least a couple of potential locations at this point. So can I give you an exact date? I cannot give you an exact date this evening.
I want to go in a very different direction. I'm extremely concerned about this. The ball is rolling along, and we're just letting ourselves pretty much get talked into over a $500,000 expense here that we haven't taken into consideration what this means we can't do, and it's at the expense of perhaps some dollars that should go to existing facilities. I go back to when this was first presented to us, and it was a certain amount of money. They were going to fundraise the entire amount, then give it over to the town, and then there would be operating expenses. Well, now it's the town is potentially, and I don't disregard the potential of a Trillium grant, but there are other projects that we've been working on for years too that should probably get some priority with the Trillium grant situation too. I'm also concerned that, it's nice that they've got $130,000, as you say, in the bank or pledged whatever, but what is the capacity? Have you gone out and determined that there is capacity to raise even another $50,000 for this? And I'm not doubting their enthusiasm, but, look at the Port Elgin Library project. We got a nice big grant for that, but the donations from the public, I don't think they were that much money that came in there. And that was a project that encompassed potentially, or captured the attention potentially of almost everybody in the community. I'm very cautious about this because, even if the fundraising, added another $70,000, that's $200,000. That's less than a third of the price tag that we're seeing here now, and that doesn't take into account annual operating expenses. And at some point, I think we need to be realistic about what are we doing here, and are we really prepared to spend $400,000 worth of taxpayer money on this when we've got some other pretty big projects that have been priorities for years that we haven't got around to funding yet. So I'm certainly saying all of this knowing that, I don't have kids of my own, but I hang out with kids all the time. As a matter of fact, I was at the puppet show at the museum this afternoon with a little 2-year-old, and, I would drag them off to a splash pad if it was here, but $400,000, we can't just continue to spend money. It's nice, Jane, that we've got now some more dollar figures here, but to me, this all hinges on how many dollars are going to come from other directions, because I don't honestly think that the tax base is that supportive of this coming from the tax levy. And so, when are we going to see the fundraising plan? And I don't begrudge what you said about the town knows how to, launch a campaign and stuff. But, quite frankly, we didn't have a whole lot of success with the library project. We ended up hiring somebody at the end. We have had a number of other projects where as soon as work started, fundraising stopped. So, the idea, I appreciate what they're saying about 2017. That makes sense to me. It's a big year in Canada. We should be doing some legacy stuff in this community. But, as soon as we start building it, it's going to be even harder to raise money for it. So, to me, that part of the piece, that piece of the puzzle is incredibly it would be very helpful right now. Because I certainly, as a member of council, I'm just shaking my head at the idea of $400,000 when we don't have $400,000. And so I need to know how we're going to get some help with this, and I need to be convinced that there is a fundraising campaign there that will go beyond. They've had some great events, and they've raised, $10, $15, $20,000 at some of these events, but it's a whole lot of $10, $15, $20,000 events to get close to that number. And Trillium funding's not guaranteed. It's a nice idea, and perhaps this would have a good shot, but is that a shot at $100,000? Is it a shot at $300,000? What's it a shot at? Because we're continuing to just let the ball keep rolling, and at some point, taxpayers are going to be asked to pay something for this. I certainly would not vote for something right now that the expectation is about $400,000 from the levy. That's irresponsible on my part, so I couldn't do it. So when Jane and Councillor Myatt brought up the idea of a fundraising plan, when might we see some more detail about what the expectations are realistically for how much money they could actually raise before 2017 when they'd like to have it built? Because once we start building it, it's going to be hard to raise money for it.
I don't disagree with you, and there certainly needs to be a fundraising campaign initiated. I think we need to get some more questions answered to the size of the splash pad, and some of those more technical questions answered as well. There's risk in rushing such a project for sure, and ensuring that we've got the most appropriate location for such a splash pad, the appropriate size that this community can support, as well as features and amenities that go along with it. So until those are decided and determined, a fundraising campaign should not commence until we know exactly what the dollar figure is going to be.
Thank you. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, just quickly, the impediment here is our support or lack thereof, right? I mean, the impediment is there needs to be a decision from council as to whether you support the splash pad and where you support it going. And then you can have a fundraising campaign. You can't really have a fundraising campaign until council said, "Well, it's going to go on our land, and we're okay with that." And go ahead. And at the same time, some commitment from council in terms of its level of funding support. And we have supported projects in the past very similar to it that have been very successful at fundraising. And you can limit the liability of the municipality by saying, "Well, here's what our cash contribution is going to be," like we have in the past. Skate park is a prime example. So. But I think the process is held up in terms of being able to answer that question about what the fundraising campaign should be and how much money can be raised until we say to the community, we're okay with the splash pad and here's the location, and we give it our blessing. So I think we need to get to that point. Hopefully we can get there fairly quickly. I think even if there are some complications with parcels of land that are being considered, we should come to this table as soon as we can, and even consider conditional approvals or give our agreement in principle from council that these locations are okay for us to go ahead with, and that's going to unlock the opportunity for the committee to go back and say, well, here's what we can do now, here's how much money we can raise, and perhaps get a commitment from council. So I'm hoping that we can see that happen, that at least an agreement in principle from council. Or not, potentially, but an opportunity to decide whether we will give agreement in principle in short order so that we can unlock that potential for them to raise that money and move forward. Thank you, Mr.
Mayor. Go ahead, Mike.
I just want to comment on something that Vice Deputy Mayor mentioned. And she mentioned the Port Elgin Library on 2 occasions, $1.4 million project. We were floated the idea we might be able to obtain an $850,000 grant some 6, 7, 8 years ago. And we had about 6 months to turn that project around. And in less than 1 year, that committee raised over $300,000, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to say that, yes, that project came up $200,000 short. That was a 20-year debenture payment for $15,000 a year. I just want to say that I think that the Port Elgin Library and all the supporters of the library will agree that library is worth every penny of that $15,000 per year that we spend on that debenture payment. In terms of the Ontario Terrain Foundation, I know for a fact That association has approved numerous splash pads, and I think that there would be good success with that. I didn't think we were trying to make a decision on tonight what amounts we were contributing. I merely opened the discussion with questions. When's the fundraising plan coming? When can we expect a decision on the location? And two other questions. I was merely asking questions.
Yeah, and I think
we were
heard
trying
them.
to make a decision tonight.
Yeah, I think.
But I want to clarify that point about the library.
All right. I agree with you, Mike. And the increased square footage covers half of that debenture, the new revenue stream that we got for it. So it's less than half of the 15,000. In any case, I mean, that's not what we're here to discuss about. We're getting way off track on this. We should stay focused on this. I think there's a lot of questions here, and I think the presentation, and again, this is here for information. I think we're getting in way too many questions right now until we get some more firm numbers and some intent. I don't think there is any. We're not being asked to spend $500,000. We're not. Other than I think we should be wholeheartedly encouraging this fundraising committee to proceed, and that we will find solutions for all of these problems, and that we will have a splash pad in due course. And I think that's what we should be talking about instead of getting twisted off into the weeds here a little bit. In any case, I think we've had enough discussion on this. So, Andrew, end of our agenda, a motion to adjourn. Don and Luke, all in favor? We'll reconvene at 9:15.